Hello there, welcome to Minerva. It is Jo here, and today we're going to take a look at a little couture technique, which is how to cover a press stud. You may wonder, when will I ever need to cover a press stud? But it's a great technique to know, which is not often shown in pattern instructions, but you can switch it up depending on your fabric choice. So if you're making something chunky, a coatigan, a cardigan out of stretch fabric, a coat out of boiled wool, any sort of fabric that's really thick, and you know that making a buttonhole will spoil the overall look of your outer garment. So I'm wearing a ready-to-wear coatigan here. It's a really thick cardigan, and because I have a button band on this side, then I have covered press studs on the inside. The covered press studs mean that I can join my coat and I don't have any fastenings on the outside. It's also useful if you have really big buttons or feature buttons, which if you made a buttonhole for a button that big would either exceed the width of your button band, or you would need a really thick button band to enable you to put a buttonhole in, or you have a really heavy button that you want to attach on. This one's super sized. So say you had a swing jacket and you just want one button at the centre front, you wouldn't want a buttonhole that big. So what you can do is cover a press stud, have that on the inside, and then have your feature button on the front. This technique only really works with very big press studs. You can also use it in bag making as well. So if you want to have a press stud on your one of the flaps of your bag or on a pocket flap, then you can cover a press stud in fabric matching your lining, possibly inside your bag, so that you don't have a big piece of metal showing. You need quite a big press stud to do this. Ideally, I'd have loved to have had a bigger press stud to show you, but I've got this one here today and I'm going to show you how to cover it. You only tend to cover really big press studs. If you try to cover really little tiny ones, then it's really tricky. But I'm going to show you a close-up shot of how to cover a press stud. The first thing to do is to cut out a circle of fabric slightly bigger than your press stud. You don't want it too big because you don't want a lot of bulk behind the back of your press stud. So cut out 2 circles. Next, get an awl and pierce a hole in the centre of one of your circles. It's best to use an awl because that just splits the weave rather than cutting it. If you cut it with a little pair of scissors or a seam ripper, you will break the weave of the fabric. Press the press stud onto the fabric, and on the other one also make a hole. This is for the socket side. This is the side with the indent. And then you place that on top of the male part with the little popper on, and then snap them together, and that will clear the hole in the centre of the fabric. Remove 1/2. I'm going to work on the ball side first. Thread up a needle, put a little knot in the end, and you're going to do very, very tiny running stitches around the edge of the fabric so that we can draw up the fabric. You just need to use your thumbnail if you can. That will draw the fabric up into a sort of cup shape. Once you've gone all the way around, draw up the running threads. Just check from the right side that all of the creases are on the back. Turn it over and then take some stitches from one side to the other side, east to west, north to south, and just catch any folds that you can see and creases. Pull them quite tightly because you want to draw all that fabric to the reverse of the press stud. Then you can just do a few little loop knots on the back. And snip off your threads. Next, you'll need to be marking where the holes are so that you can attach the press stud when you've finished. So I'm just using the needle to sort of poke around and just find the hole. There it is. Just using the end of my chalk pencil just to mark on the 4 holes, because I'll need to know where they are when I want to attach it to my garment. There it is, that's the last one. Next, we're going to do the same on the other side. I find it's easier if I snap the 2 together because I've got a bit more to grab hold of. So I've put the fabric face down with the other piece of fabric and press the snap on top. And I'm going to repeat. I've got just a little bit more to hold on to now when I've got the 2 snaps together. Tying off the same as before, just with 2 little loop knots and pulling it really nice and tight so all the fabric is on the reverse. And now I can split the 2 apart. You might get lucky and get a few of the chalk marks marked onto the other side, or you can just repeat what we did before, finding the holes with a needle and marking with chalk. And there they are finished. You need to cut quite small pieces of fabric because you want the backs to be nice and flush. It's a lovely little technique to know. It's great if you're making coats, duster jackets, little vintage coats, you know, the little Chanel ones with a little collar, and you want to put the really big Jackie Onassis buttons on, but it would spoil the look of your jacket if you had big buttonholes. Even if you can do a lovely bound buttonhole, sometimes if they're too big, then they spoil the scale of your jacket. So they're also great actually if you're making something like a Marlowe cardigan and you've tried your stretch buttonhole on the stretch fabric as a little test and it didn't look very nice, it wasn't going through the machine very well. You can cover the press studs on the back and then you can put your button on the front, whichever button you choose. It also works really well with covered buttons, which is the same technique, where you just gather up a little cup shape and drop the button in, so you can match the fabric on your jacket with the fabric on your covered buttons. It's best not to do this with a thick fabric, so you just won't get the dexterity. So it's good to use either a little piece of your lining fabric if you're making a jacket, or if you're making something from a woolly item or a knit fabric, because sometimes knit fabrics, when you cut them, they really fray a lot. So it's best to use a piece of contrasting poly cotton or a little bit of cotton, just a little scrap piece on the inside. I hope that's helped. It's a nice little tip to know. If you would like to know more sewing tips, then do head over to Minerva and check out our tutorials, sew-alongs, fabric hauls, there's lots to see. We would love to see what you have been making, so do make an account with us, share your makes and take a look at what's been happening in the sewing community. Thanks very much for watching. See you again soon.